everybody. Welcome to another joint episode, Hell of a Way to Die. And, well, there's your problem. The Engineering Failure Podcast. We have Nate, we have Francis, and then we have Alice, Liam, and Justin. And folks, because this is our podcast, you guys get to partake in the dad bants. So how's your gardens doing, guys?
I wish I could have a garden. What I have is a triangle of shared grass that somebody from the council comes and mows once every couple of weeks. But they've been keeping up with the mowing, so it's quite nice. It is green still.
I have a tent, like a garden grow tent that I put up to try to keep the hot peppers I was growing alive so I can actually get some hot peppers before it becomes winter. And I'm 100% convinced my neighbors think I'm growing weed. Maybe I've developed the British psychosis of just being paranoid about what your neighbors are doing and or thinking. But I mean, on one hand, I feel like if I was growing weed, I would have a taller tent, but I'm excited for the cops to raid my house and be like, no, it's literally just habanero peppers. And they're going to be like, yeah, but you got those seeds from peppers you bought. You didn't pay Monsanto. You're going to fucking jail.
I just want to see a cop bust it, rip open your grow tents and do the we got in TV where they always rub cocaine on their gums or something. Right. They got to taste the pepper and then they run screaming out the back.
You put that in your eyes, it'll feel real good. My girlfriend's herb garden is growing delightfully. I cannot stress enough that I have no part in this, simply because everything I touch dies.
I've been trying to figure out how to tackle the back garden next year, because this year the landlord came in when he decided to fix the deck. The crew came in and just annihilated everything back
sure
there.
Did, bud.
So the only thing that's back there now is just this gigantic pokeweed. And then I think there's some sunflowers. So I'm I think next season I'll try and put something there. Good thing I didn't this season, because it wouldn't be there anymore.
Poor tomato
I'm just imagining the British equivalent of Ice-T as the police detective just being like, the kids are calling this Scotch bonnet. It gets you high and it fucking burns your nose.
It really helps clear out your sinuses. We gotta put a lockdown on this. Well, we've got the there's your problem people on, because they like to talk about engineering fails, and Nate and I like to talk about military stuff, and we're going to talk about an engineering marvel, a fucking masterpiece of humanity.
We could not find another example of the military using engineering poorly, so we had to do a good one.
Yeah, well, it's easy to run through and talk about the shit that we fuck up, and this is the great thing about this, about the technical, the machine gun or multi-launch rocket system or anti-aircraft gun, whatever the hell it is you want to weld in the back of a pickup truck, is that these are all this is not necessarily a military, this is a civilian thing. And this is what Mad Max, this is the precursor to Mad Max. Fury Road, when you've got all of these, you've got the war rig and you've got Immortan Joe in some gigantic, monster truck ass thing. This is the beginning of that. This is how you get there. So I wanted to, so Nate and I are the ones who have been overseas and done the military thing. Nate, how many technicals, what kind of technicals did you run into while you were overseas?
So believe it or not, I don't think I ever saw the full authentic technical. As from I understand it, people say that these are more common in Iraq than in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, the Taliban for sure drove around in Toyota Hiluxes, but they typically didn't have weapons mounted in them. That being said, the Afghan police had Ford Rangers with bench seats in the back, and they would sometimes have a pintle on the top of the cab where they would mount obviously not a Dishka, not a full anti-aircraft gun, but was it a PKM or an RPK? So you would have those periodically. Also, one time we lent out some Humvees, and some guys tried to mount a PKM on a Humvee pintle mount, and while jamming it in, fired the PKM very close to my head. So if you ever wondered why I can't hear shit in my left ear, it's those guys. Appreciate it. However, I was laughing because when we talk about the fluid categorization of what counts as a technical, I remember that we one time paid an Afghan contractor to come out with what the Army very, very politely refers to as an SST, or a shit suck truck, to clean out a septic tank. And someone asked, like, I wonder what happens when this guy's done with it. And sure enough, someone spotted this same truck driving to like an open field about 500 meters down the road and just blasting all of the fucking effluent into like a field. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, when you turn the shit suck truck into like a shit blasting cannon, is that now a technical?
Yes, actually, nothing else has ever been a technical.
Yeah, reminds me of the classic sign outside a small business. Pools cleaned, septic tanks drained, not same truck.
Except in this case.
Yeah, so your average technical is basically it's a vehicle that's not created for military purposes. Now that's why you see pickup trucks used as technicals very often. But really, we can go back. Let's go back. As
Right.
Steve from Blue's Clues teaches us
Are
here.
pharaonic war carts a technical?
So yes. So the first technicals, and see, here's the thing: what came first for a technical? Was it the machine gun or the ability to take something long distances on wheels? Because we've always been able to do artillery, right? The French had pulled artillery. Civil War, we pulled artillery. Artillery is just a big ass cannon. So when does something that's artillery, when does that no longer become a technical because it's something for shooting long distances versus something that's like a machine gun? So the first technicals, according to Wikipedia, and I tend to agree with this this kind of nomenclature on it, is the Tachanka, which is a horse-drawn vehicle with a machine gun mounted on the back of it. This was used during World War I and during the Russian Revolution to such a degree that is actually sung about in some Russian revolutionary songs about the soot-covered boy manning the machine gun on the back of the horse-drawn carriage. So this is the beginning. You have a machine gun, you put it on a vehicle, you have a technical. And I know eventually we'll get into all kinds of other hot messes, but this really is where it begins. You just take a machine gun and you put it there, and then you just start gunning down the bourgeoisie, and you're good. So really, it's a communist weapon, and that's why technicals are great.
I'm just laughing because it's like it has to be a motor vehicle, I think, to meet the qualification. Otherwise, horse archers are technicals.
Yes. Is a chariot a technical?
Chariot archers are technicals. Civ 5 taught me that.
Well, I feel like it needs to be something rapid fire though. So you need some kind of guy who's really good at knocking the arrow real quick and getting off, 4 or 5 a second.
Right. Is a Huacha a technical? The multiple rocket system from China?
Yes.
If it is mounted onto the back of a moving vehicle of some kind, quite possibly, because you can put a multi-launch rocket system in the back of a truck and call it a
Didn't
technical.
they do that?
So
World War II, didn't the Soviets do that? They had the farm trucks.
Katyusha.
Yeah, there we go. I couldn't remember the name. Those are technicals.
Yeah,
I have decided.
hey,
is
that's
a
fine.
siege engine a technical?
And see, this is why episodes like this are important, because you can say, like, look, a pickup truck with a machine gun, it's a technical. Well, of course, but then we have to suss these things out. Is somebody who can shoot a arrow really fast on the back of a horse a technical? If we're going to say the Tachankas are technicals because they're horse drawn, does it have to be motorized? These are important questions, and I'm glad that we're all here to form the brain trust to kind of figure it out.
That's right.
I think a horse counts as a motor, but I think it needs to be on wheels.
1 horsepower. All right, what if the distinction, right, is
Put the horse-drawn cart on rails.
ooh. What if the distinction is a technical is like a civilian vehicle, including a horse, adapted to have a weapon, but the weapon isn't like a personal weapon; it's like a crew-served weapon.
Yeah, because and that does, if you have a pickup truck and you throw 4 guys with AK-47s in the back of it and have them hang off the end and shoot, that's not technical. That's just that's just a personnel carrier at that point. It's not really a technical until you have a crew serve, until you have some sort of large machine, rapid fire or above. And it has to be mounted as well. You can't just have a guy in the bed of a truck with an RPG or a Stinger missile. that's just getting from point A to point B. Until like somebody in like a Syrian workshop like bubble welds the shit in the back of a truck with a bunch of like crossbars and everything that you constantly trip over. It's not a technical until then.
But I would argue that if you welded an AK-47 to makeshift pintle on a pickup truck, it's a technical.
Yeah.
Well, and therein lies another distinction. The M249 machine gun is a 5.56 machine gun that does do full auto fire, but it is considered a personal weapon, but it can be mounted to a pintle mount. So if you have a 249, I mean, obviously the 240 Bravo, the M60, yes, those are big machine guns. You need a tripod. But if you can shoulder a weapon and rapid fire it, would adding that to a pintle mount turn it into a technical?
Does that also mean that a CH-47, which is a cargo helicopter with a 240 Charlie mounted on the back of it, which they do, is now an air technical?
Well, and we're going to have to, technicals have to be on the ground as well.
What about
something that's on the ground?
What about an unarmed helicopter sling loading a Humvee? Is that a technical?
with the 240 Bravo on top of it and one crazy dude just in it screaming and shooting down.
That's what air cavalry is. I've been meaning to ask.
Yes. I mean, air cavalry would whip way more ass if that's how they went about things, for sure.
Yeah, as we saw with the Osprey, and also a shout back to the Osprey episode. I had somebody who actually flew them who contacted me and was like, "Oh yeah, that Osprey, like, not only did it kill people, but also people hated it so much they decided to stop being pilots. They hated it so much." Which, like, if you meet pilots love nothing more than being pilots and talking about how they're pilots. And he's like, "Yeah, we had half of a class like quit because they just fucking hated the Osprey so much, and the military wasn't going to let them fly anything else."
I'm a conscientious objector, but only for the Osprey.
So, moving forward, the technicals are, how we see them depicted are going to be, machine guns in the back of a Toyota pickup truck of some kind. But really, it's anything that you can, any kind of civilian vehicle that you can find and you can bolt a crew serve or, some kind of artillery, not necessarily artillery, but, if you put a mortar tube in the back of one of these things, it's considered a technical, which we ran into a lot in Iraq, man. People love to, zoom in, shoot some mortars ineffectively, and then zoom out and make us all be awake for an hour and a half. So fuck those guys.
Also an IRA classic. Like, they almost blew up 10 Downing Street with one of those, with a van with a hole cut in the roof with a mortar in the back.
Oh my god! I had no idea.
They missed.
That's weight savings. That's important. I never did that with my van, and I feel like I missed an opportunity.
Thing is, they missed the cabinet room by like 30 feet. So, got uncomfortably close with that.
I saw one of those time machine guy memes, and the one was aim 30 feet lower. Yeah. And I was just two guys in balaclavas. And I was just like, if only. If only.
This is a complete derail, but I thought you would appreciate this on the same vein that there was somehow someone misquoted Margaret Thatcher and made an inspirational quote meme where it was supposedly Margaret Thatcher saying, "We only have to be lucky once, you have to be lucky all the time." It's like that.
Someone sent me that. They were just like, "Did she say this?" And I was like, "No." All right, let's talk about the IRA campaign during the Thatcherite era. It just started sending walls of text.
Oh my god.
Well, it is an inspirational quote, I will say that.
Inspires you to look at a set of blueprints before you show up with your technical. Figure out where you're shooting at first.
Why is it called a technical, by the way? We never addressed that.
So there's a couple of there's a couple of places where this comes from. The main in the book that I have, they say that the technical comes from in the UN, basically. So the UN, when they would be in these, various civil warring countries and whatnot, they would wish to hire some local warlords or local, militias to say, "Hey, we're going to be out and about. We need some kind of protection so we don't get our shit pushed in by everybody else out here who has a gun." Now, they say that technically the UN, legally was not allowed to hire these people. So it's basically a paperwork thing because they couldn't write down on the invoice, we hired such and such local militia. We hired technical advisors. And these technical advisors happen to show up with pickup trucks and Dishka machine guns. So the word technical comes from, go figure, fucking paperwork and tax purposes. We have the technical. And
yet another case of hardworking employers getting shafted into the independent contractor designation.
Exactly. It's hard to form a union if you're just considered an independent contractor who can be hired and fired at will.
Just the next dimension of Uber is a guy wwho shows up in a Hilux with a Dushka.
Once again, who says the government doesn't drive innovation?
Literally, in this case. Although to be fair, I would pay good money if I could have a rideshare option where the guy will literally blast through traffic with like just an M2 mounted on the back. And it would be especially fun if he was just like, all right, you got to get there. You got to get back there. Here's your helmet. Like, good luck.
Just envisioning an armed gondola in Switzerland, or in Italy, it's meant to shoot any low-flying American cargo jets out of the sky. And it's like, well, just a gondola technical? I mean, it's...
Just mount a forward machine gun that cannot move left, right, up, or down on the front of the roller coaster, and just look. You get one chance. You get one chance, and 3 minutes later, you'll come back around, and that's it. That's the fun of being in the front of the roller coaster. Is not only do you get to see everything, but also you get to see if you can beat the high score.
Is a PT boat a technical?
No, PT boat's a boat.
No.
What if it's on a trailer?
Maybe. Yes, this is
Then
my
an argument
land
can be
digging.
made. All right, so let's before we get into all of our different people who love to do technicals. I guess one question is why a technical. Nate, how hard is it to drive any fucking military vehicle?
It's a nightmare. I mean, for one, it's not just the knowing how to do it correctly. I think there's two things. The point number one, they are clunky and hard to drive. Their visibility is not great. People who are familiar with driving cars are still going to have a hard time driving a military vehicle. Even something like a SUSV, which a sustainment vehicle, which is literally it looks like a Bearcat used for ski resorts. Even things like that are small. It's different and it's not intuitive. But I think the biggest thing about technicals, if I were to hazard a guess, is why are they popular? Well, because it's easy to get replacement parts for them. If you have a military vehicle, like keeping it up and running may not be easy in a war zone that when you don't have the entire US Army, fucking 30 times inflated, grifting defense contractor supply chain behind you. If you have a Toyota Hilux, like not only are they pretty reliable as is, but getting replacement parts is not hard if, you're just running off a civilian vehicle.
Like ISIS captured a bunch of Humvees, right, from the Iraqi army and then just kind of never used them, right?
They did turn them into SV bids, but I don't think they really use them as attack vehicles.
Well, and this therein lies exactly. It's not only is it easy to source parts for them, it's easy to find them. It's easy to get a hold of them because it's just a pickup truck. It can be any pickup truck. It doesn't have to be a Toyota. It can be a Dodge or whatever you have lying around. And also, you can teach any dipshit to drive a truck. Much like we teach any dipshit how to pull the trigger of a gun, if you can reach the pedals, you can be a driver for some machine gunning hooligan in the back seat. So they're great to have because they're easy to get a hold of. And when you're doing some kind of a as they call asymmetrical warfare, which is when you have two opposing forces that are not necessarily on the same technological, they're not on the same level. U.S. versus Afghanistan, U.S. versus Iraq is kind of like that. You have these us who has all of these fancy planes and lasers and guns that do all kinds of cool fun stuff, and then you've got like a bunch of guys who are a little hungry and they've got flip-flops and they've got some rusty Soviet machine guns, and somehow they're beating us because we're just absolutely terrible at asymmetrical warfare. So the pickup truck really starts to see its usage in Libya because again they're very easy to get a hold of. And we'll go ahead and dovetail directly into the Great Toyota War, which was Libya versus Chad. So in the 70s,
the Virgin Libya
decided,
versus the Chad.
It was it was pretty incredible, and there's a lot of people want to say that it's the Toyota technical that really did it, but like a fleet of technicals against like an actual armored column, the technicals are going to get fucking hosed in a heartbeat. But they were fighting Libyans, which historically not very good at fighting, for themselves. However, the Chadians, also not really great at fighting either. Didn't have a whole lot of resources, and Libya was basically taking over parts of Chad. They were doing this because, of course, there was some kind of election. Muammar Gaddafi was like, "Fuck all that noise." He put on a second pair of aviator glasses and decided to just start a second pair of aviator glasses and about 17 more medals onto his chest and decided to start pushing into Chad.
Awarding myself another 6 Aiguettes for taking the Ozu Strip.
Exactly. So, of course, Muammar Gaddafi starts to push into Chad. Chad is getting their shit pushed in. America comes to Chad and says, "What do you guys want? Can we give you some armored stuff? Can we give you these things?" And Chad said, "No, fuck that. Give us a bunch of pickup trucks. We can drive that." So once Chad has the pickup trucks, they start mounting everything into the back of it, and they just go at the fucking armored columns. And this is not just machine guns. You got your recoilless rifles, which is these gigantic. They look like big ass tubes in the back of the trucks. Usually, because of the size of them, you have to cut the entire cab off of it, and the recoilless rifle will be bolted in the back and then also writing "bitch" up front. So you and your buddy be standing with this giant tube in between the two of you as you're blasting Grateful Dead across the country. And then once they get there, they just start blowing the shit out of the Libyan armor. Mostly because the Libyans weren't a very good fighting force, because Muammar Gaddafi was constantly worried about a coup attempt, that he didn't have like a formalized military. It was just like, if I have a shitty military, they'll never boot me out of power. But also, if you have a shitty military, as soon as you come across anybody who knows what they're doing in a fighting situation, you're also going to get fucked. So Chad took back what was theirs, pushed the Libyans out, using just a bunch of pickup trucks. And this is the Great Toyota War in 1978. Please look it up and really dig into it, because this is really the first time that we see fleets of technicals being used to kick back opposition forces. Because also not only is the technicals easy to maintain, easy to get from point A to point B, but you can drive a truck forever. And you can move it faster. You can get around these armored trucks, because again, they didn't really know what the fuck they were doing with these with all this armor.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting that it's always deserts that it's best suited to. Like the Toyota War is in like straight across the middle of the Sahara, basically, and you just have all of this space to play with. Same with ISIS moving into Iraq. Same with like the SAS in World War II, just deciding to like raid Axis airfields cross desert by like bolting a bunch of guns to Land Rovers. It works really well when you have a lot of flat open space to just drive around in circles.
Well, I mean, what's a technical going to do in the jungles? You're not going to look when Ronald Reagan was selling guns to the death squads in South America. South America is not very conducive to Toyota technicals. However, if it was a desert, I'm sure we would have sent a lot of pickup trucks down there, just saying, "Look how good it did for the in Chad. Let's send them on down there." And let the death squads
working on
it. Yeah, right. Try to get through the Fulda Gap with just like your sad Toyota Hilux. Like it'll get there. It'll get there. Put it on a boat.
So we've got this, this fantastic, this new world opening up to us. And I will say also a fun fact. So this is, the Libyans also, obviously shit is still all kind of fucked up in Libya, has been for a long time. In 2014, the Libyan forces started using their own versions of technicals, but they weren't necessarily Toyotas. They weren't really trucks that you can get in America. This is because, you can't actually get these trucks legally in Afghanistan. You can't get them in Libya, places like this. Obviously, Toyota doesn't want to be they just don't want to be associated with this is what a bunch of
No.
Houthi rebels are using
some
to
live leak with like your company name across the tailgate of a truck with a gun on it is not a great look.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mark's Plumbing, taking care of the pipes and the septic systems in Libya.
Yeah.
But in 2014, a lot of these Libyan trucks that were being used were coming from a Chinese knockoff manufacturing. Go figure. The Chinese, doing a knockoff trucks now, and the company liked the visual of them being used by the Libyans with machine guns in the back so much that they created an ad campaign around it called "Stronger Than War," in which they just showcase all of the look how good our trucks do when you put an MLRS in the back of it and you shoot 17 rockets at a hind. Look how strong it is.
I wanted to throw this in there because the same thing happened in the immediate aftermath of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, in which, as reporting was showing the U.S. and fighting the Taliban and so on, one thing people really started to notice when they suddenly started paying attention to Afghanistan was the preponderance of Toyota and Datsun trucks used by the Taliban. And this became a point that Toyota actually felt obligated to respond. They basically said, and I'm reading from an article from 2001, any Toyota products presently in the country have probably arrived from neighboring countries via unofficial channels. The reporter comments that as they were smuggled. Toyota does not have a sales or distribution channel in Afghanistan, and we do not export vehicles to that country. However, this paragraph is what I love. Somewhat less laconic was Wade Hoyt, Toyota's spokesman in New York, who put the best corporate spin on the situation this week. Quote, "It is not our proudest product placement," he said, quote, "but it shows that the Taliban are looking for the same qualities as any other truck buyer, durability and reliability."
Jesus Christ. That's an untapped market, man.
And that to me is like, hey, what can you say? The Taliban want trucks that are fucking reliable. You don't see them driving, Dodge Rams out there when they have a Hilux. It's just not happening.
You just have one of those those wacky waving tube people, but it's like all black and it's got the ISIS flag on the stomach of it. It's like, come on down to Akbar's crazy house and Toyota Emporium.
Sirajuddin Haqqani's got Christmas in July sales. Wait, what the fuck is Christmas?
Our deals are so good you'll think they're haram.
Oh, it's fantastic, man. I love anybody that manages to take something like that that
kind of
be and
entrepreneurial spirit, man. They got a lot of these trucks over the border on mules, like
nation building works. Nation building works.
You just disassemble the truck in Pakistan, load it onto a bunch of mules. So like there's a mule with a door on each side, ride them across the border, and then you have a truck again.
Yeah,
I mean, when I was in Afghanistan, because the U.S.
no chicken tax.
The U.S. military wasn't allowed to buy civilian vehicles. We had to lease them, and we were leasing them they were used. Like we're saying, like 10, 15-year-old trucks, like Nissan Pathfinders or Toyota Land Cruisers or Hiluxes, and they were paying $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 a month to lease these vehicles. Literally, they weren't buying them; they were leasing them from like a contractor in Kabul or something like that. And I remember driving this absolute ashtray piece of shit Land Cruiser around a base one time that randomly had like 2 or 3, it has CD player, and their CDs were Nasheed 1, Auto-Tune Nasheed 2, and the Beach Boys' greatest hits.
That's the real winner of the war in Afghanistan, is the contractor who like leases you the trucks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you think about that. The guy was getting like $30,000 a year per vehicle that he would be allowed to take back. Those vehicles weren't leaving the FOB. They were only being allowed to drive around on a secure base. And he got to hand off some great Beach Boys tunes, Changed my life, man. I really appreciated God Only Knows after that.
I really want to make a war movie now, and the only soundtrack to it is Pet Shop Sounds. That's it. It's just like, what can I buy the soundtrack? Yeah, it's called Pet Shop Sounds. It came out
Pet Sounds. When you say Pet Shop Sounds, I thought it's like weird Beach Boys Pet Shop
Just
Boys
blasting
hybrid.
West End Girl as you're driving around
Just
Tehran. Awesome.
Yeah, West End Girls with like a 5-part harmony.
From Apocalypse Now, but it's Surfing USA.
I mean, I swear to God, that was my experience. I remember driving around Fob Toronto for the first time, listening to It wasn't Surfing USA. It was California girls driving past the burn pit where people were dressed up like ninjas in sandals, just dumping gasoline on toxic waste. And I was just like, I live in a shitty war movie from the future.
This is why Three Kings is the best war movie ever made.
Yeah, we need to get around to watching Three Kings. So we've got our we've got the Great Toyota War, and now technicals are starting to really be used by not just small Mideastern and sub-Saharan governments, but also warlords. They are seen as a prestige thing. The more technicals you have, the more warlord you are. That's just how it works. There's not a lot of things that you can have that show your power other than a fleet of pickup trucks.
Oh, it used to be horses or cattle, right? And now it's this.
Exactly. You have a bunch of look how many you want to challenge my power. I have 300 Toyota Hiluxes with various armaments on them, ready to go against you. Come at me, bro. But in Warlord.
Of course, the Sun Tzu brain genius thing is just yes, but also if the Americans invade, I can take all of the weapons off of these and start renting them to them.
Exactly. You can take, and that's the beauty of these things is you can take. That's a military vehicle. I know a military vehicle, and therefore I can destroy it. But as soon as you take a burlap sack and cover up the pintle mount and put up a bunch of bags of rice around it, how do you know? Now you're doing a war crime. As soon as that machine gun is taken off of the back of that and it's used to transport anything other than military supplies or military people, destroying it then becomes a war crime. So fun times in Iraq and Afghanistan. As we know, Americans hate doing war crimes. We never do it. Have never done it. We'll never do it. Let's jump to Somalia, and let's jump to Black Hawk Down, the Battle of the Black Sea. Somalia, this is the Horn of Africa. There's a lot going on. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but if you have seen Black Hawk Down, or if you have seen it, you'll see the technicals being used in it quite a bit. There's a lot of pickup trucks with a lot of machine guns used all over that place. However,
I remember Mark Bowden's book was the first time I'm obviously too young to have any memory of the stuff in the 70s and 80s, obviously. But Mark Bowden's book was the first time I had heard the term technical used to refer to that kind of a vehicle. And I feel like I can't remember if they used the term in the film, but I definitely recall that once that sort of was established as Somali warlord gun truck, that's how that term entered into sort of mil-spec parlance, if you will.
Exactly. So despite what you see in the movie, though, not a whole lot of technicals were used by the warlords in Somalia, especially during the actual fighting. Because, as it turns out, as I said earlier, when you take a technical against an actual somewhat competent military that has equipment and that knows how to use that equipment, you get your shit fucked up by Cobras constantly if you show up, and also if you come in with a machine gun or anything on the back of your pickup truck, and you've already shot at one Black Hawk helicopter, every one of them is going to get completely destroyed. So, not a whole, despite the movie, and the book that I read does say during the Mogadishu Mile, which is when the Americans basically just had to run back to the base because they got fucked up so bad they lost all their vehicles and they literally just had to run back to base away from the warlords. Some of the technicals came out because they realized, hey, we can do kind of a show of force now, but they didn't have them out there during the actual campaigns, which is going to be an important side note to come up with. But also, in this area is also when you start to see it. They start to be used more and more by everybody. So every warlord has a technical, and you start to see them get really decorated. Because obviously, if there's a bunch of pickup trucks out there, you want to know who you're shooting at. So rather than, that's a Humvee versus a Russian, I don't know, BMP or some shit like that, you've just got, your painted up technicals, your as we call them, jingle trucks in Afghanistan, but you do it to a pickup truck. By jingle truck, it means you just hang a whole bunch of fancy shit off of it, and it jingles everywhere it goes. They're great. Now let's we'll also discuss Chechnya really quick, because after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russians decided to go and try to fuck up Chechnya.
Yeah, what if we use the finest Soviet shock armor doctrine of the 1980s against a bunch of tower blocks? Nothing will go wrong with this.
You would think that getting fucked up by Afghans in cave systems would teach a few things to the Soviets, but it didn't. They didn't learn anything. And maybe, it's like, well, now we're Russians. We're not Soviets anymore. It's going to be different.
I kind of blame conscription, right?
The beauty is in never learning. The beauty is in never learning.
It's just like all of the like Soviet troops who had been in Afghanistan had either aged out or at the top of this like pyramid of ritual hazing so high that they didn't give a shit. And so like it was just down to like a bunch of kids to get owned.
The people who love capitalism and hate communists love to point out the Soviet Union as why communism fails, and they'll post like pictures of bread lines, or they'll post pictures of like shitty apartments. It's like the real argument that you should be trying to make is like how fucking owned their military got constantly and without end. Like, look, I get it. If not for the Soviets, we wouldn't have won World War II. But also, they lost 20 million people, and that didn't actually have to happen. If there was any kind of planning and training and build up of things, rather than a bunch of like shitty old Soviets constantly doing power grabs at one another.
Like that Throwbot is at the problem.
Yeah. I'm just gonna develop some of the finest theoreticians of armored warfare of the 20th century and then shoot all of them in the back of the fucking head the year before the Nazis invaded.
It's fantastic,
Take gun, shoot Nazi.
Yeah. When man with
Training
rifle
over.
is shots.
Not me. I said Nazi, not me, as you're sprinting away.
Don't worry, eventually he'll get shot, and then you get to pick up the gun and keep charging. As we all learned in the movie, the historical documentary Enemy at the Gates. Chechnya is important because Chechnya is when the Chechnyans were putting, as we call it, hillbilly armor onto the technicals. They're finding out that like maybe catching a bullet or two to a gas tank or to the tires is just not optimal. You can a pickup truck is great, but you can disable it very easily with just shooting the engine block out. I don't know if you could do it with an AK-47, but certainly something a little bit bigger. You can disable a pickup truck. I mean,
also, one of the things that's helpful is that war zones tend to be the world's biggest repository of scrap metal. So you can just like get a machine shop wherever and just start welding shit on at random.
Yeah, we did that in Afghanistan in 2004. I drove around a whole lot in soft top Humvees that had no doors on them. It was basically a canvas top, and leaning out the side of it, just hoping for the best. Now, 2004 in Afghanistan was not really IED height, so we weren't too concerned about IEDs. However, still kind of fucked up. And the people who did have to go out and do, real live, combat missions, either they would do hillbilly armor, or they would just put fake armor on it and hope that they wouldn't get shot at, because the insurgents would say, "Oh, well, that'll just be a waste of bullets."
Well, that's grim. Just to have the fake CCTV camera from a 7-Eleven equivalent.
Exactly.
Basically, it's the active combat zone version of the detector vans for your license fee for the BBC. That's actually a guy in the back of the van turning a hand crank to make a satellite dish go around. Which also might be a technical. Just saying.
Yeah, it's a psyops technical. It's using like a psychological weapon on you.
If that's a technical, then the Bluesmobile is a technical.
I'm trying to think. If an ice cream van is not a technical unless you're throwing ice cream to people, in which case it is a technical.
Well, what about if the ice cream is poisoned?
Well, the ice cream man also drives the truck, though. You need if there's two
you would
people
need
in the ice cream
another
truck.
guy in the back. Yeah,
got one guy's got to actually also scoop out the ice cream though.
Crew serve, soft serve, just fucking blasting.
So actually, an ice cream truck is not a technical, but a food truck is.
Is a fire truck a technical?
Yes, because you can shoot water off of them with the tender thing.
Look, an ice cream truck becomes a technical if the guy selling the ice cream encourages a kid to eat it too fast so that they get a brain freeze. As long as there is some sort of malicious intent, then it becomes a technical.
I don't think a fire truck is a technical because it's purpose built.
Right,
That's true.
fuck,
But
yeah.
When I was back home in Indiana the last time, I saw a kid on the road with a Volkswagen, a diesel Passat that he had rigged up a big fucking smokestack through the front hood of the car, so he could roll coal in a Passat, and that's not what the car is intended for, and that's technically an obscuration device, so that is technical.
Yeah, rolling coal in a Passat to destroy the rest of the world slowly and surely with greenhouse gases. That's a technical. I get, and I mean, if that's it, considering the military is the largest polluter in the world, I guess every vehicle we have is a technical. It's not purpose built to do greenhouse gases, but it's just a
So long as it has more than one guy.
Yes.
Exactly. There's got to be at least one additional guy to run the fucking pollution machine, and then it's a technical.
A Ford Fusion with an officer in it is not a technical, but with two officers in it, that's a technical.
As long as one of the officers is leaning out with a pistol.
I remember reading a book about the Italian campaign in World War II, and there's one of the U.S. Army's improvised approaches to mine clearing on roads was to take a Jeep with a private on the hood and holding a fucking .45 caliber pistol and just shooting anything that looked funny in the middle of the road, and that is a technical.
That's better than the Soviet Air Corps, where instead of being inside of the airplane, you have a parachute and you just hang on the wings and then slide off the wings.
Hey man, you know what?
There's a lot
it's
of
all good.
How do you find that private though? There's my question. Who wants to be the guy who is strapped to the front of a thing? Because if it goes off, you're catching it full face.
Who is the least popular soldier in that unit?
Who's your least useful guy? It's like, fuck, he can't even shoot straight. God damn, we need somebody who's useless but can also hit a target with a 45.
Is the airport pushback truck, while pushing a military aircraft backwards, a technical?
only if the military aircraft can engage targets while it's on the ground.
But if an airport security cop with a gun is on that vehicle, then it's a technical.
If there's an air marshal on the airplane, then the airplane becomes a technical.
I so badly want
machine gun.
to mount a machine gun on the stairs, the like mobile stairs that they have.
No, put it on the baggage train. Put one machine gun on each cart.
There you go. That is a technical. That is a technical. Those fun, whatever, jet washing vehicles. It's just like it cleans your plane and blows it up. This is
Oh yeah, the
efficiency.
de-icing truck, definitely a technical.
Yes, absolutely. Whatever those weird fucking jet de-icers the Soviet/Russians built, and then there's just like one machine gun poking out
they
on
put
top.
like a jet engine backwards on like a tank chassis, and it was just like, yeah, we'll just drive up to your plane and like blast it with this thing, and there's no ice anymore.
Oh shit, the railroads do that. They have like jet snow clearing cars.
Yeah, technicals.
That's a technical, yeah.
I always have to hand it to the Russians for, they weren't efficient, but if somebody had an idea, they just went with it and just like, yeah, fucking give that guy money. Put a jet engine on a thing. Jet engine, the ice off of an airplane. Done. Cool. See if it works. Oh, it didn't? That was a terrible idea and we should have thought about it for a couple seconds first? Fuck it. What do we have now? We have a new technical. Done.
Is a rotary snowplow a technical?
I don't know. I mean, if you're using the rotary snowplow to blast someone with snow and ruin their day, then it's a technical.
This is Zamboni, a technical.
What would be like the most?
That's how you calm the crowd at the Flyers games. Just
what if you
golf
put-
cart with a
Just give him an
t-shirt
empty-
cannon is a technical.
The t-shirt cannon makes it a technical. I was going to
t-shirt
say.
cannon is a tactical. That's a tactical. The thing that's disappointing about t-shirt cannons, because I looked into buying one at one point, just to have one. Like, yeah, thanks Patreons. They are expensive.
Yeah, you need an NFA stamp for it.
You need a what?
Oh, it's like because it's a machine gun. It's like,
Yeah, you have to get a special stamp because it's a machine gun.
Yeah.
You can only get
Yes.
t-shirt cannons
Yeah.
manufactured before 1983.
exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, it has to be a pump action or a bolt action t-shirt cannon.
Oh, that would suck. I'm out here. Sadly, we're driving around my neighborhood with my t-shirt cannon trailer. Just one
Then
t-shirt
again,
every
if
35
we're back
seconds.
to Enemy at the Gates, imagine Vasily Zaitsev with like a bolt action t-shirt cannon. Just a Nazi just catches a rolled t-shirt in the forehead.
I think a t-shirt cannon on a trailer is
Igor Summer Picnic,
that's
1939.
artillery. That's not a technical.
Wait, is it indirect fire or? Because like most of the time you can see your target, you're not like arcing it, right?
Well, you're shooting in a general direction, and somebody there will get it.
If you shoot an artillery piece with as a direct fire weapon off a vehicle, I think that's a technical. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's a little bit. It becomes self-propelled artillery if it's being fired, like you said, up to arc it, which makes the mortar thing a little dodgy.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, if you've got a like a howitzer and you're firing it as a direct fire weapon, then 100% technical.
Is a
Yeah, if
gun
the French-
truck a technical?
If it's made to be a gun truck, it's not a technical. If you're using something as it should be used, like the snowblower, if you're blowing snow with it, it's not a technical.
Yeah, but
now,
like-
if you mount a machine gun to it and shoot the snow ahead of you and then snow blow it, then it becomes a technical.
But like they didn't issue 5-ton trucks in Vietnam with the pistols, right? That was a field modification, which makes it a technical.
Yeah, the whole thing with air guard, stupid niche thing, but I just remember this from fucking Ranger School. Yeah, when you drive around an old Army deuce and a half, like they have welded a pintle to the top of them, and someone has to be on there with a 249 up to basically be notional air guard in case you get strafed by, helicopters. I mean, not that the NVA had that shit, but apparently that's just a doctrinal thing that a troop truck should have at least somebody watching ahead of them, but like that's not them reacting to shit on the ground. It was specifically flagged as air guard. So that's not a really standard practice anymore. So yeah, I think that counts as a technical.
Yeah,
I think even a Humvee turret, you could argue is a technical. It's been absorbed into the doctrinal practice, but I don't really think the original Humvees had turrets.
No, there are definitely modifications that are made, but if it rolls off the manufacturing line with a turret built into it, it's not a technical.
Good point.
Now, if enterprising soldiers take a circular saw and cut a hole and have some guy popped out with a machine gun, then you got a technical. It all comes down to what kind of modification do you as the person driving it have to make. And that's why now our LMTVs, which is what we use instead of deuce and a halves, they all have turrets on them. They're troop transport, and they're transport vehicles. You can throw troops or supplies into them, but they always have a turret and a turret mount up on the front and a pintle mount, and it's made to take care address enemies in the sky and on the ground.
I have a notional definition here. I think we can boil this down. If attaching the weapon to it violates the warranty, it's a technical.
Well, that makes sense because, yeah, a cop on a Segway wouldn't be a technical because cops allowed to have a gun and ride a Segway. But the guy from Twisted Metal who's just like riding like what looks like a Nordic track between two enormous wheels, that probably wasn't intended to be armed. And so that makes it a technical.
That man, I can't remember the backstory for Axel. I used to play a lot of Twisted Metal, but I think it was his choice to be that way. So it does turn him into a technical. But as we said, a technical has to have two people. So I don't know. Does it?
If he's giving a guy a piggyback ride, then he's a technical.
if there's a Master Blaster situation going on, you
exactly.
get a little like a short person with a 9mm, just put him on the shoulders and be like, yeah, now we're a technical.
But that also sort of implies that every Dominican and Jamaican sound system truck is a technical.
Those Japanese
'cause that's not the
political
warranty.
advertising trucks, the propaganda ones, those are technicals.
That's why the Doof Warrior, who's playing the flame guitar in Mad Max Fury Road, is also a technical. I mean, he's got a flamethrower, so it's built specific. It's built out of parts, a bunch of things put together with a gigantic sound speaker to get everybody pumped up, and then also if somebody tries to fuck with the Doof, he'll just flamethrower you with his whammy bar.
I feel like the real question in Mad Max is, are any of those vehicles not technicals?
Well, and
That's a
that's
good question.
Yeah, we'd have to go back to the manufacturing line to see if what they're pulling off was built as is, or if all of it has been welded together, which I think all of it is. Like, I think everything that you see there is some kind of warranty violation. So if we're going to go by Alice's standard, which I think is a good one, all of those, are technically technicals. So let's
technically be technical.
Yeah. Let's go into our modern warfare, our Afghanistan and our Iraq. As we said, Afghanistan, they had to basically smuggle technicals on the backs of donkeys. Let's see you do that with a Russian BMP. You can break a truck down apparently and drag it across the.
Francis, I don't mean to jump in on a fact check, but where were you getting the thing about the smuggling? Because to me, it's like, I mean, they were smuggled in the sense that they probably were resold from Pakistan. But I mean, you could drive from Pakistan to Afghanistan even when the Taliban controlled the country. You just had to convince the 16-year-olds guarding the fucking border that you were allowed in. And so in that regard, like, I think you could easily buy a truck in India or Pakistan or in what's it called, like the Central Asian countries in the north, like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and then resell them in Afghanistan. It's just that Toyota doesn't have there wasn't like Bob Ford's Toyota dealership in Kabul.
Oh, this reminds me of our Trash Future tie-in, which is that one of the mercenaries on the Equatorial Guinea coup is notionally operating a Toyota dealership in Yemen right now.
That's right, yeah.
Far Eastern Motors.
So, Francis, was that something that you found in a story that they actually literally like smuggled them in on disassembled or like inside vehicles, inside boxcars?
Yes.
Or
and there are, as you said, you can a lot of times drive them in, but even if you have the Taliban watching things, you're probably going to get your stuff taken by the Taliban. We're talking about Afghanistan in the 90s, where there's mostly warlords running everything. Centralized government was notional at best. There was one. They controlled Kabul, and that was about it.
And then the Taliban not only took over Kabul, but then killed the guy who was in charge of the government by hanging him from a tank barrel. So, needless to say, things were not normal.
So some were, but yes, as you said, you could also just drive them on in. Now, Nate, you're aware of the Khyber Pass?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Khyber Pass is one of the ways. It's kind of a cut through the mountains to get from Afghanistan into Pakistan. Have you ever?
Basically, it's from the road from Peshawar to Jalalabad, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
Correct. And I spent a lot of time in Jalalabad when I was there, and we went to the Torkham Gate. Outside of the Torkham Gate is, and do you remember, maybe this was just me, but every little small village in Afghanistan seemed to have a theme for the things you bought there. It always was, like, for some reason, like, this is the village you go where, like, you'll always get, fresh cut sugarcane for some reason. There's like 1 million stalls that sells it because that's what everybody just has here. The place outside the Torkham Gate, it was all vehicle parts. It was all like, and I mean like fully built engines just sitting on the ground being like, you want an engine? I'll sell you an engine. You want some struts? You want some parts?
I love the village pick and pull.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just like going there being like, I could use some parts for my 1978 Corvette. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, a long day running errands, driving to Melon Town, and then Cigarette Town, and then Washing Machine Alternator Town.
What I'm learning here is that small towns in Afghanistan work on the same principle as planets in Star Trek. They just have a thing that they do.
Welcome to LS Swap Town.
I'm going to go back to Mad Max Fury Road. You got the Bullet Farm, and you got Gas Town. And you got the Citadel.
Yeah.
We're going to Gas Town because we gotta gas up the Hiluxes.
What happens if you run out of gas before you get to Gas Town?
I don't know.
You don't want to do that.
Don't. That's what you do. So in Afghanistan, you see plenty of them. They were used a lot by the Taliban, but lately, like recently, until there was more of a centralized government, the Afghan army having one, there really weren't a lot of technicals because they got the shit blown up out of them constantly, especially by American air power and armor. Now, Iraq is a special case because Iraq was, using technicals when we had like, I don't want to say like there was an actual fight on the hands, but they had
tanks, like actual tanks.
They did. they had tanks. They also had a shitload of technicals. Uday and Kusei, it turned out, loved technicals. They were all about it. They loved the idea of put a rocket, put a machine gun, put all this shit in the back of a truck, and just go fucking haywire on some people. And as we said, a technical works fantastic when you're fighting other technicals and you know what you're doing. Uday and Kusei had no idea what the fuck they were doing, obviously. But all they're the Eric and Don Trump Jr. of the Hussein family. They're like really dumb guys who have a lot of power, and you're like, God damn it, they're going to get themselves killed being stupid. And go figure, they did. What ends up happening when you happen to be the son of a dictator in the Middle East and not in America.
So to clarify, just from the notes, Francis, Uday and Kusei loved technicals so much they decided to ride them into battle.
Well, Uday and Kusei decided to send their technical fleets into battle because they saw how well technicals worked in Somalia. Now, if you will think back, Somalia did not use technicals because they got blown up very easily. So Uday and Kusei watched Black Hawk Down and decided that looks really cool, and sent their people to go fight American armor, American A-10s with technicals. It did not work out very well. He also sent them in, and one of the pictures I'll send you guys for the slideshow is a rendering of one of those guys in the technicals, because not only did they just send technicals against American armor, they made them all wear Darth Vader helmets.
What?
Like, if you look at the Darth Vader helmet, but you took like all of the face part off of it, and you just had that black helmet on top that kind of flares out down at the bottom. They offered absolutely no protection whatsoever, but they looked cool. So
not so much Darth Vader as Dark Helmet.
Yeah, very dark helmet.
I love to be boiling my entire fucking cranium in a black helmet in the middle of the desert with no roof.
Do we look cool? Do we look cool at 109 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yeah, you look really cool as that, the GAU-8 from a A-10 machine gun cuts your fucking truck in half.
I'm just laughing because, I realize I must have misread the show notes, because I understand now where you're coming from. But, I had thought, based on your description, that Uday and Kusei had died fighting on technicals. And I just had this vision of just sloppy Middle East fail sons just being like, oh, happy day. Oh, what a lovely day.
You know what it would literally have been had they done that? Is it would have been the other guys aiming for the bushes. We can survive this jump.
Yeah, Uday and Kusei would have been way cooler if they had died, at the trigger of a machine gun. You can respect a guy for falling in battle rather than being like, hey, you guys go and also put on Darth Vader helmets so you look cooler while you die.
Well, R.I.P. to some real ones, I guess.
They gave us permission to be weird. I don't want to say too much, but really, Uday and Kusei, when I was feeling really low about myself, they really helped me pick myself up, and I'll always remember that.
Yeah, how did they die? They got blown up, didn't they?
They were in a house with and then they got surrounded by special forces, I think.
Yeah, that's bitch made. Don't go out like that.
Go out painting your body perfectly silver and just screaming.
Well, I think it can potentially be based to get surrounded, providing you do the Butch and Sundance thing, which I don't believe they did. I think they just blew up the house.
We don't mince a lot of time and words, and if there's civilians around, well, they're not considered civilians if you're hanging out with Uday and Kusei and wearing Darth Vader helmets. I want to know where they sourced a bunch of Darth Vader helmets. Like if there's a Spirit Halloween that opened up,
you just go to the Darth Vader helmet town in Afghanistan. I am sad for the civilians, if only because it decimated the cast of Iraqi Entourage.
God damn it.
All right, so post Iraq, technicals are still being highly used, and Libya once again back in the technical game, and they have entire warehouses that are dedicated to experimenting with putting all kinds of different things. You'll find everything from 4-barreled anti-aircraft, the ZU heavy heavy anti-aircraft guns that basically they just crank them down so that they're pointing down, so you can engage, a thing that's supposed to take out a literal helicopter. Is like, shoot those guys in that bush over there.
Oh, this reminds me very strongly of my favorite piece of war footage, which was from Syria, which was the smallest kind of Toyota van, the tiny one with the little the little cab, and they use it for it's like a K van but smaller.
I think
yeah,
so.
I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Oh, those things are
like a little Isuzu or something.
Yeah, maybe. And they had the ZU-23 in the back of one of those, and the guy firing it, he could do 2 shots, and they had propped the wheel with a brick. And then they had to wait for it to untip over because it would elevate 45 degrees in the air, just blasting this truck over every time. And so you would just hit bang, bang, long wait for it to come back down again.
Reset.
I mean, because that's the thing, right? I remember seeing this with
Gotta get ballast, man.
The Polish army have self-propelled howitzers that are on the same frame as this vehicle they call Rosomak, which is if you've seen a Stryker, it's like a big Stryker. It's like a huge 8-wheeled vehicle. And yeah, when they fire the howitzer on that, they have to extend out these little robot feet that balance it against the ground, because otherwise, yeah, it's you can't, even with the e-brake on, firing a howitzer with a wheeled vehicle is just gonna move it around and shit. So yeah, I can only imagine in a Daihatsu Hijet or whatever, you're fucking shooting an anti-aircraft gun out of it.
Yeah, I think one of the videos that I saw was a MLRS, multi-launch rocket system, in the back of one, and they fired all the rocket pods. But the way that it was, the way that it was, I guess, situated, it basically caught the entire cab on fire.
Oh no!
There was nobody in it, thankfully, or unthankfully. I don't know if it was, whose side it was, but it's fantastic. You watch it go off, and then you watch what starts to happen. You're like, there's literally nothing that can be done. You just have to wait for all of the rockets to stop firing, and then walk away because your shit's on fire now.
My favorite Beach Boys CD was in there.
So,
how am I gonna listen to Pet Sounds now?
Is the Tahir Inshat quadcopter food truck or a fruit truck a technical?
If you order a gun from Amazon and an Amazon drone delivers it to you, is it a technical? So that's our that's everything that we have, the basic history of the technical up until now, and everything that we have that we're trying to figure out, is it a technical? So I think we can bring in Alice's does it void the warranty? Was it built for this or was it not built for this? And it's got to be on land. No helicopters, no airplanes, and no PT gunboats, unless you are driving. If you're just taxiing an F-35 down a highway and using the forward machine gun to shoot things, then it becomes a technical. But as soon as you lift off, not a technical anymore.
Would a hovercraft be a technical? Is it on land or not? Yeah, but it is floating, right?
Yes. No, I'm giving. If you put a machine gun on a hovercraft, it's technical.
This is why the Tahir Inshat one is interesting, because it's a quadcopter, but it's tethered with a cable to a battery on the ground.
That Bizarro World giant whatever Chinese bus concept that was supposed to go over the highways.
Oh yeah.
Can that be a technical?
What if the ZU-23 or whatever mounted inside the Daihatsu Hijet fired 3 times and achieved liftoff? Would it then
it
not
would be a technical for the first 2 shots and not for the third?
If you used in a chronoplane on a very flat desert.
If you were firing an AK-47 from the plane from Lord of War that landed on the highway in Central Africa, is that a technical?
Only if it's moving.
Well, exactly, because as soon as you leave something where it is, then it's an in-place pillbox. And, when we gave, we sold a bunch of M1 Abrams tanks to the Afghan army, or to the Iraqi army. I'm sure the Afghans have some somewhere as well. But I was talking to the contractors as they're unloading them off the boat at the port of Qasr. I was like, so how useful are these actually going to be? He's like, oh, these are going to be pillboxes. They're going to drive them to a place. They're going to put them there. and they're going to pop out of the hatches and shoot machine guns because they're not going to keep up the actual firing systems, and the main gun will not work. So,
But whoever built that fucking tank in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, made like $19 an hour. So you know what? The circle of life.
one day it'll be taken by ISIS, and ISIS seems to have all of the really brainy, I guess, tank guys, because they get all that shit running. That's why ISIS comes at us with our own MRAPs and our own Humvees and our own, just every vehicle, which is another circle of life, which is where, American taxpayer dollars sells MRAPs to the Iraqi army, which then gets stolen by ISIS, and then a bunch of ISIS flags put on it, and then an American A-10 has to shoot that MRAP and destroy it. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember doing the math on this, and it was kind of ending the episode on a downer, but it's always kind of funny, too, that people complain so much about, like, oh, well, how will we afford free college in America? And it's like, I had most of my undergraduate education paid for by the Army because I was an ROTC cadet, and I also went to grad school on the GI Bill. And if you took all of the money, even if I had stayed in grad school long enough to get a PhD on the GI Bill, all of the money I would have gotten is less than the total cost of one Humvee, which is $300,000 new. Never mind the cost to ship it to Afghanistan or ship it to Iraq, donate it to the Iraqi army, and then deploy using the cost of flight hours and a 500-pound JDAM, send a fighter plane to drop a bomb on once ICE steals the Humvee and is driving it around, making it into, well, a SV bid. If an SV bid wasn't the original design, then maybe it's a technical. A one-shot only technical.
Yeah, a one-shot, a zip gun technical. You can use it once, don't fuck it up.
All right.
Anyway, that's our episode. Before Francis does the final sign-off, I just want to say, Liam, Justin, Alice, thank you so much once again for coming on What a Hell of a Way to Die. And
thanks for having
all
us
of our
on.
fans listening.
Thank you for having us.
We will link to their main feed. Please listen to Well, There's Your Problem. It is an incredible show.
Yeah, lots of great stuff. If you like to listen to three people make fun of how we keep fucking things up in engineering, that's Well, There's Your Problem.
That's us.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. I've enjoyed for the last month reading and obsessing over Toyota Technicals, and I feel like I can finally put it to rest. I can finally sleep my 1,000-year sleep, at least until I get like really into some other insane thing, because what else do we all have to do while we're all locked inside due to COVID?
Maybe we could do an episode on Jingle Aviation. Old Soviet Mi-17s get repurposed as fuck all anything vehicles in Afghanistan, because that's 100% a thing too. If you guys didn't know that, they let's just say those things are flown without any warranty whatsoever in Afghanistan, covered in soot, looking like shit, sometimes with amazing stencil art. And yeah,
you
it's a whole
gotta
thing for another day.
you gotta give a lot of props to the Afghans who get into that shit and just like, yeah, let's do it.
And to the people who do the art, you have to give props to the jinglers.
Exactly. Bouncing out the perfect jingler that won't get covered in soot from the just incredibly distressed engines that are still running somehow.
Thank you all for being Patreons. Please go listen to Well, There's Your Problem. Thank you for being Patreons for us. Thank you for your support, and we will talk to you all next week.